All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. We have a pretty intimate group today, which is great. We'll have a lot of chance to be, interactive. My name's Caitlin Trujillo. I'm the head of the account management team here at Impero. In a moment, I'll be handing off to Lisa Bosio. We practiced that with Novak Education. Lisa's prepared a really interactive session today to explore the relationship between UDL and SEL and how we can be using those to meet the needs of our learners. Before we dive in, I just wanted to share a little bit about Impero. And you can click through a couple of slides, Lisa. Sorry, I meant to say that.
Next one.
Yeah, we can go to the next one too. As we were preparing for today's presentation, obviously I want to share a little bit about Impero. We're a worldwide company. We exist and serve 30,000 schools, over 4,000 corporate clients. And let me just continue to make sure we're letting people in from the wait room. Sorry about that. All right. Are you able to let people in from the wait room?
Yes, I'm just admitted somebody. Yes.
I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. I'm trying to do both here. So I just want to make sure that, our goal as an organization is to provide a supported learning environment for students. We want to provide technology that ensures they're safe and productive online, no matter their individual circumstances. So, as we were preparing for this educational opportunity, we reached out to some of our network in California and some of our teachers and friends and colleagues and customers. And a recurring theme in those conversations was, the need to learn more about how we support our students now that life has changed so much post-COVID. So, our students are not the same. Their learning styles and experiences are not the same as they were before the pandemic. And now the way teachers have to cultivate meaningful learning experiences can't be the same either. So we really felt excited about the work that we saw happening with Novak Education, as they're working to understand the networks of our students' brains and how to leverage that understanding to create, engaged and supported students. This really aligns with our goal of creating students who are ready to learn and grow and find success. So, our goal today is to provide an opportunity for you to take this back to your schools, your districts, your campuses, to have conversations about what is the role of UDL in our technology-driven lessons as well. So thinking about, this learning and connecting it to our products is something that we'll get to later. But for now, I want to just hand it to Lisa to take over the presentation and guide us through some reflection today and hopefully some learning today and hopefully sparking some new ideas for us in education.
Yes, thank you so much, Caitlin. Really appreciate that. Hey, welcome everyone. Again, my name is Lisa Bosio. I am located here in Modesto, California, Central Valley. And I have been, just a little bit about me, so you're like, who is this person? I have been a passionate educator, never thought I would be, but there's a backstory behind that, for over 22 years. And recently became a Novak full-time educational consultant, where I support and do professional development with supporting the whole child, doing the UDL and SEL, Universal Design for Learning, social emotional learning, and helping educators across the United States and even internationally. Instead of doing this, we need to do this. We need to help educators understand how to weave in social emotional learning throughout their day to support the brain so the brain is ready to engage. So thank you so much for being here. I'm just going to go ahead and a couple things that you'll notice. I am going to go ahead and turn on closed captioning in case some of you, I can predict based upon variability, which is one of the premises of Universal Design for Learning, that some of you would like to follow along as you're listening to the closed captioning below. Some of you may not. It's an option, not mandatory. So however you want to follow along, please feel free to do so. So what I'd like to do today is just do a quick poll, and then I'm going to show you a resource that I have for you. We call it the back channel, full of, number one, the slide deck in just a moment, and resources that you are actually going to be able to take away. And some of these strategies, social emotional learning, you're going to be able to utilize tomorrow. Because I support educators not just with professional development, but I support educators with instructional coaching, which honestly is my love. And it's what I did in my formal school district here in Modesto, California, and really helping them apply universal design for learning and social emotional learning throughout their day that removes barriers to learning and engages our learners so that they can become expert learners. So we'll talk more about that in just a moment. So I have a poll here that I want you just to do a social emotional check-in. And if you're not familiar with this, this is the Yale Mood Meter. It is one way that we can support our students and ourselves, educators, to understand where we are at emotionally. Our kids come into school, principals come into school settings, teachers come into school settings with a certain emotional state. And I am a firm believer that all learning is social and emotional, because we are people who learn by interacting, but we also understand that our mood states can affect that. It can shut our brain down or it can engage our brain. So what I'd like you to do is, I'd like you to decide where you're at in this Yale Mood Meter, meaning you can pick a color. Because the poll is going to be color coded. So if you're kind of feeling like, man, I'm kind of timid, I'm drained, I'm tired, you're going to be in the blue. Okay. If you're like, I'm at ease, I'm secure, you know, I'm blessed, I'm chill, I'm kind of relaxed, just coming in, you know, it's been a good day for me, nothing really major happened. You're going to be in the green. If you're like super excited to be here, you're cheerful. I mean, you're the person who wakes up in the morning pretty much all the time and you're like ready to roll, right? Or if you're in the red where you're feeling like, man, I'm really worried about some things in my own personal life, with my students, with my staff, whatever your role is in education, you're going to be in the red. Now, I will preface before I launch this poll, none of these feelings are irrelevant. None of these feelings should be judged. There's no shame in any of these feelings. Our feelings come and go, right? The key is, Dr. Dan Siegel talks about, we need to name it to tame it. So understanding our emotional state is the first thing that the Castle 5 Core Competency, which we'll talk about in a bit, discusses. And it's so important that we understand where our students, our colleagues, whoever you're supporting, where they're at in their emotional state, and then how to help them self-manage that with some choices and options. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll. Give you just a few minutes. I'm going to launch it right now. How are you feeling today? Pick a color, and then we'll go ahead and roll. And I am going to play a clip of music right now as we're doing that. If the music is annoying to you or a barrier, please mute it. Go. Let's be on a loop. Okay, I see 91% of us have participated. If there's one more person that wants to put it in, right on. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, since we're such a small group, which is fabulous. It means a more intimate session, which is totally cool with me. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, and you can see as I'm sharing the results, 33% of us are kind of in the blue state. Could be kind of like slow on energy. You may be a little timid, or you just, whatever the feelings are, mopey, glum, whatever. Okay. Green, 50%. So over half of us are kind of like, hey, I'm happy to be here. I'm relaxed. You know, it's been a good day, whatever. Yellow. We've got a couple people. I would put myself in that category right now because I tend to be in the yellow, but friends, I have also gone into the red, especially when I drive on the road. And I need to learn how to self-manage that, right? So I am constantly becoming self-aware of where I'm at in my emotional state, and we didn't have anybody in the red. So why is this important? Because if our learners are anywhere in this quadrant that's not going to support, whether it be colleagues, students, if we're anywhere in these quadrants that are going to shut the brain down and we're going to be in fight, flight, or freeze, the brain won't learn. That's why it's imperative that we weave in social emotional learning while we're universally designing our learning environment for our learners. So we're going to take a peek at our agenda. So what I'd like you to do, I'm going to escape right now, and I'm going to go to the document that I have for you that Caitlin has been so kind to post for me. And if you are interested in following along with the slide deck and taking your own notes on it, you have access right here. So just click on that. That'll give you access to the slide deck. There is a recording going on. So once that's uploaded to the cloud after we finish, you're going to notice that I'm going to post the recording with a password. It's good for 30 days. After that, we do so many presentations in Novak that we have to take things off our Zoom account. Okay. So basically, if you just kind of look at where we're going, I'm going to show you strategically how to weave in some social emotional learning throughout your day, how to support your educators to do that. If you're an educator in a classroom, how to do that with your students. Okay, so if you notice, and we're going to talk about this, I am really going to be weaving in the CASEL 5 core competency. So again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. So we're going to be talking about student check-ins. I just did one with you. The Yale Mood Meter is a great way. I've seen educators and principals actually post it up before a staff meeting, and teachers actually literally come in and post where they're at. No name, just put it on the different quadrants. And that informs the principal where his or her or their people are. Because if people are coming in annoyed and peeved and in the red, again, no judgment, that's going to inhibit the brain to learn. So we have to start helping people learn how to self-manage those emotions so that the brain can actually get engaged. So just talked about that, how to do that. Here's some options and choices you're going to be able to look at hopefully later on in our session. Or if you want, you are welcome to look at this as I'm presenting. You feel free, do whatever learning supports you, remove any barriers that are going to inhibit that learning. Okay. And then we're going to talk about how to build relationship skills. Key to the brain, key to overcoming trauma. Linda Darlene Hammond says, the best thing, the antidote to trauma is relationship building. I love that. We're going to talk about that and give you some things you can try tomorrow. Okay. And then we're going to go into how do we then, once we've identified these emotions, how do we self-manage them, build social awareness and responsible decision-making throughout our lessons. And then I've also listed some lesson design ideas that CASEL actually has offered educators to try. Now, I will tell you, this right here is really where I sit down with educators. So as we co-create universally designed lessons that remove barriers, we also discuss and co-collaborate and co-create lessons that incorporate the CASEL 5. But I'm going to give you some ideas on how to do that in our discussion. So without further ado, please go ahead and get that back channel. It is forever yours. And you can go back to these resources, share them with a colleague, and also share the recording if you so choose. So let me go ahead and now that we've discussed our agenda, what I'd like to do is, this is a brilliant way to incorporate social emotional learning in whatever setting you're in, whether you'd be an administrator, whether you be a teacher, whatever. And I demonstrate this with the people that I support. In fact, I just had an educator tell me in Hawaii, middle schooler, she said, hey, Lisa, I tried this with my students. And at first my middle schoolers were a little awkward. But once they started connecting, I heard some great conversations going on just with them connecting. So it's called CASEL's 3 signature practices, and we're going to do it together. So what I'd like you to do as a welcome is, in order to feel part of that sense of belonging that the brain needs in order to settle down and start learning, we need to connect. And it's not about education at all. So I posted a prompt for you. And what I'd like you to do is answer the prompt. And I'm going to give you, you're going to give you some think time in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like. And then you're going to respond to somebody else's post with a reaction or comment. Okay. So for example, answer the prompt, what do you do to relax and chill? Okay. So if somebody says, I binge out on Netflix, like on a weekend, then, and if that's something you do, you're going to go, me too. I do that too. And this is my favorite show. Okay. Or if you like to take a walk, or you go out and you exercise, whatever you do to relax and chill, go ahead. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. You see my timer down here. And then what we're going to do, we're going to debrief very quickly on what are some of the things you appreciate about doing this activity? Maybe what were some barriers for you, and what SEL skills did you use? If you're familiar with any sort of SEL skills, active listening, responsible decision-making, self-management of your emotions, being self-aware, feel free to add those in. But 2 minutes, answer the prompt. What do you do to relax and chill? And remember, respond to somebody's. If you see they have something like you, me too, I do that. Go. All right, run another 10 seconds just because we're a great small group. So I'm just going to kind of cut the timer off, but please feel free. Oh my gosh, Caitlin, were you cracking up? I mean, I love when people are like, I eat a lot. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I have to go to Orange Theory, play video games, right? Go for a hike. Here's the deal, everyone. The beauty of this is that we're getting people to connect, right? People that I don't know. Honestly, I don't know any of you. Maybe you know me, who knows, right? But just by us connecting with something that we like, we're sharing nothing super personal. We're not talking about education. We're not talking about academics. A lot of teachers are like, shouldn't they be talking about academics? I'm like, no, the whole idea is to get our students and our teachers or whomever you're supporting to connect. And notice how many people said like, hey, me too, or had something different, right? So what I'd like you to do right now is just think, and feel free to post in the chat if you'd like. What were some of the things you appreciated about this activity? Quick SEL activity. Like I think we overthink social and emotional learning, just like I think we overthink universal design for learning. What was challenging about it? And what were some of the SEL skills that you had to use? So again, I'm going to just finish off the timer, give you 40 seconds, some think time, post in the chat, unmute yourself if you'd like, because I'm not playing any music. Go. All right. Hey, if anybody wants to unmute, feel free right now. I'll just be quiet for about 5 seconds to give you that opportunity. Again, want to provide options, not just like you all have to post in the chat, right? So 5 seconds if anybody wants to unmute, or we will go ahead and move on. All right. And can I just tell you, I love what people are posting in here, right? We start it's easy to, it's like, oh, okay, I can share that. What this does is it's a quick social emotional learning skill that you can incorporate in whatever setting that gets people connected, that gets people, students, understanding like, oh, I didn't know that about you, that you like to hike, or, and Ryan said it made me feel more self-aware. I really had to think about like, what do I do to chill, right? So what it does is it brings that sense of belonging and connection within a learning environment, whatever that is, and makes people feel welcome. So on that document, you'll see I've got a video by Castle and also how to do the 3 signature practices. You can do this tomorrow. In fact, what I tell people in my presentation, you are welcome to steal my slide. Well, you're not going to steal it, but you can use it tomorrow as kids walk in. And this is what my educators have been doing, is that as kids walk in, hey, I need you to be thinking about this. We're going to do some connection time. And these are middle school and high schoolers who are like, I don't know, right? Elementary as well. Okay. How do we get these kids connected so they feel like they belong in our classrooms? Here's something super simple to do. All right. So I just basically want to tell you briefly about it. We did it a welcoming inclusion activity. No one was left out, right? Because we are moving towards and working to help education be equitable, not equality, equitable, where all students' needs are being met, right? Where everybody feels included, right? And throughout this presentation, you're going to see some engagement strategies. Just did one, posting, you're going to have time to reflect, and then we're going to do an optimistic closure. That basically is something tomorrow, educators, whatever you're in, you can do. Wraps in social emotional learning. Why? Because you have to become, exactly like Ryan said, I had to become self-aware. And I had maybe to manage my emotions, especially if you've got kids in the classroom or teachers at a staff meeting chatting it up, right? They can't just be like running around, dancing on the tables, right? They have to be socially aware of their choices. They have to make some responsible decisions on how they interact with people, with their colleagues, with their peers, and you're building relationship skills. Just went through all of Castle's 5 core competencies right there, just with the signature practice. So just want to show you, and this was a huge aha for many people, including myself, is that when we think of social emotional learning, and this is the Castle wheel, by the way, there was a huge push about SEL curriculum and instruction in the classroom. Okay, that's notoriously how it was taught. People were purchasing curriculum, and I'm not against curriculum. I'm not. But what I will tell educators is, and in fact, Castle realized this back in December, and they're like, SEL has to be part of the classroom climate. So it's not just open up the 30-minute lesson, let's teach this, and then we forget it. Social emotional learning needs to be woven in throughout the day. So even if you use a 30-minute curriculum, woohoo, do that. But how are you weaving that in throughout the day? So it becomes relevant for our learners, because one thing we know about UDL and UDL, if it's not relevant, if we're not engaging the brain by making learning relevant, kids get disengaged. Okay. So it is our job, educators, to be incorporating social and emotional learning throughout the day in our lessons. And we're going to talk about some simple ways to do it. We just did one. Okay. Starting off your class, engaging your learners, and then how to weave those social emotional skill sets into your lesson design. All right. So I'm going to turn on, sorry, I forgot that, it went off. So what I want you to do is, before we move on, you're going to see a lot of this is a pause and reflect, very much part of social emotional learning, but very much part of the UDL framework is we have to give our learners time to pause and reflect. So how can Castle's 3 signature practices help you create that climate that optimizes social and emotional learning? So you have the option of, you can do a quick write, you can do a doodle, you can post on social media, conversation with a colleague, or you can post in the chat. So just about a minute, go ahead and pause and reflect before we move on. Where could you use this? How would it help create a climate that optimizes social and emotional learning? Go. All right, about another 10 seconds. So hopefully you notice that, you know what, that is something actually now, especially now that Bosio has put this on a resource document, I'm going to look at that. And you know what, here's the deal, educators. A lot of times I think we overthink things and we get too perfectionistic about, oh, it's just got to be perfect. You know what, try it with your kids. Try it, principals or administrators, whatever role you're in. Put it up and just explain what it is. And it's a way to connect. It's a way to create that sense of belonging. And yet we are using our social emotional skill sets to engage, to think, to become self-aware. So try it. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then reflect and learn like, oh, next time I do this, and even ask your students, your teachers, what could I do better to make this a more, to make this more inclusive, to make you feel better about joining in and talking with your colleagues or your peers. So just quickly, if you're not familiar with the UDL framework, it's based on over 30 years of neuroscience. It's basically, how does the brain learn, right? In order to engage our learners, and I'm talking adult learners as well. All three parts of the brain have to be lit up and on fire. But here's the deal. Not all learners are the same. Not all learners learn the same. Not all learners come into our settings, whatever it is, with the same emotional state. And so as UDL practitioners, we need to remove barriers that get in the way of students accessing information, showing what they know, and engaging in information. So where we're going to land very quickly is we're going to land right here. This is where, when you look at the UDL framework, here's where your social and emotional learning actually happens, which is why I love Universal Design for Learning, because it really does truly support the whole child. And that's where we need to go, especially in our society today. It's not about the academics. It's not about the grades. It's about a child's emotional, social, and academic and behavioral well-being. Okay, so we're going to land right here with helping kids sustain effort and persistence and helping them self-regulate, because when students are in that state of persisting, when learning gets hard, they get frustrated, how are we going to help them self-manage those so that they can get engaged? That's multiple means of engagement. And ultimately, when we think about Universal Design for Learning, it's not a set of click, I do this. The goal is to create expert learners who are resourceful, knowledgeable. So when we think about social and emotional learning, we have got to help our kids be expert at being socially aware, self-aware, how to manage their emotions, but not in a one-size-fits-all, giving them choices and options, removing those barriers for them, how to develop relationship skills, and how to make relevant, strong decisions, like how to make decisions, right? So that's where we're going to be really focusing on when it comes to Universal Design for Learning and social and emotional learning. So when we look at just that multiple means of engagement, there are three, what we call in UDL, there are three guidelines. Where we're going to land right here is on minimizing distractions and threats. Okay, yes, we need to optimize autonomy and choice. And then we are going to dip into options for self-reflection and self-regulation. But honestly, if we want the brain to get engaged, we have to, as educators, minimize stress. Now, that's in our environment, or is there too much stimulus for kids? Is the room set up so it's equitable for all of our learners? Do all of our learners feel like they're part of? Yes. But I'm going to land on something that I am so passionate about. And it's all about universally designing that learning environment, social and emotionally, and academically and behaviorally. So I love this slide. I have a lot of my educators that I support. They love it so much as a reminder of what is Universal Design for Learning. And it goes the same for social and emotional learning as well. They post it up. So here we go. Universal Design for Learning, to not complicate it, is first, What is the standard asking them to know and be able to do? So when we think about social and emotional learning, how can we help our students become more self-aware? Okay. How can we help them manage their emotions? How can we help them make responsible decisions? How can we help them cultivate those relationship skills? Okay. That's the learning we want them to do. Now, where do we incorporate voice and choice for our students? Is it a one size fits all? Is everybody doing belly breathing all at one time? Or do students have choices and options to check in? Can they do the Yale mood meter? Can they put up sticky notes? Can they chat with a partner, right? Where's student voice and choice? Where are we hearing what our students need? Our educators need? Are we really listening? We're going to talk about how empathetic listening is so much part of social and emotional learning. And then what flexible pathways am I offering my students to engage academically, socially, and emotionally and behaviorally? That's universal design for learning. That's UDL. But also with social emotional learning, we need to hear what our students need, and we need to provide flexible pathways in order for them to use those social and emotional soft skills in order to move forward in the learning process and become part of our society, because they're gifted and talented, but we have to help our kids self-regulate. So let's quickly talk about the brain connection between well-being and learning. Because if we don't understand the why, and I'm all about Simon Sinek, leadership guru, talks about knowing your why first and the what and how, well, you'll figure that out, okay? But if we don't know our why of social emotional learning or universally designing an environment by removing barriers, then it becomes just basic, like, okay, I'm just going to do this because I was given this 30-minute lesson and I'm just going to do this. And the kids are like, yeah, let's just do this. And nobody's engaged. So let's understand why we have to incorporate both universally designed for learning, removing barriers to learning academically, and also removing barriers to social emotional learning. Dr. Cantor from Turnaround Children is a huge advocate of understanding that adversity, trauma, and let's be honest, everybody, I think we've all been in trauma. Educators, parents, communities, our students. So many of our students came into this year after COVID, and I've talked to educators all over the world who say, so it's not just in your situation, our kids don't know how to do school. They don't know how to get along. They don't know how, they just have lost that. Okay. So what we know is that trauma happens in the brain, and it gets stored in the body, so it can get triggered, right? So adversity doesn't just happen to children, it happens inside their bodies and their brains. So if we understand that students, colleagues come in with trauma, big T trauma, death, divorce, loss of a home, okay, let's talk COVID, okay? But there's also the small T trauma, frustrations, angers, parents fighting, breakup with a boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever, okay? We've all experienced trauma. How do we help our kids move forward with that? Social and emotional learning. Because when students are in trauma, when we experience what's called an amygdala hijack, fight, flight, or freeze. And when a person, regardless of age, is in this state, the brain shuts down. No learning is going to happen. It won't, which is why we need to get our kids connected. They need to feel safe in that sense of belonging, incorporating those social emotional skill sets, becoming self-aware and manage their emotions so that they actually can engage in the learning process. So all three parts of the brain can be lit up. I love Rita Pearson. She is now since passed, but she said every child needs a champion. And how do we champion students? We remove barriers to learning, universally design it proactively, and we also remove barriers to social and emotional learning by teaching our students different skill sets for SEL, but then giving them the flexible pathways for them to actually try things and then reflect. Did that work for you? Did breathing help you? Did conflict resolution help you with that? Did journaling help you with that? Those are the type of students, those are the type of people who need a champion, who gives them the resources, but then we trust our students and our colleagues and whomever we're working with to choose what they need. We don't choose for them. They learn to be empowered to choose. And Dr. James Comer says, no significant learning can occur without significant relationship. And that is one way and the key way that we are going to minimize threats for our students and our colleagues. So just going back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, okay, the physiological, in order for our students, peers, whomever, to learn and to become self-actualized, their basic needs have to be met. Now, as educators, I understand here in Modesto, California, I've worked with students in poverty, students in gangs, students raped. I've been in that trench with people. Now, can we provide those physiological needs? Sometimes, but we can give them resources. But then here's where we go, educators. Safety. Do your students feel safe in your classroom? Do they feel safe to take risks? Because if we're going to universally design our learning environment by removing barriers and offering choices and options for academic success, and if we're going to provide choices and options for them to become self-aware, self-regulate, develop those relationship skills, they're going to have to take risks. Do they feel safe to take risks? Is it a safe environment to do that? What about the sense of belonging? Do they feel connected to you if you're an educator? Do they know that you see them and hear them? Even if you're in middle school and high school, we can make small little connections with our kids. How's your day going? Doesn't have to be something intense, okay? But do they feel that sense of belonging? And we're going to talk about some strategies to do to help you with that. And then do they have that esteem and that ultimately self-actualization where they feel they get the feedback from you, positive feedback, baby steps on how to make better choices academically, social, and emotionally so that the brain can get engaged? And I think Dwayne Reed said it best. Students have to Maslow before they can bloom. So we have to meet students' social and emotional needs, that sense of belonging, that sense of safety, before we can ever do Bloom's taxonomy. So be thinking as we kind of move through, and I want you to take a kind of a pause and reflect. How does understanding the brain connection to help you think differently about supporting your students' emotional well-being? Okay. How can we minimize those threats like the guideline in recruiting interest talks about in UDL by thinking about forming relationships? And we're going to talk about some things, some specific things you can do in just a moment. But how does that help the brain settle down? Because we know when people feel that connected and that sense of belonging, the oxytocin floods the brain, which is all relationships. Those relationships fill that brain with oxytocin, and it settles the brain down, and kids feel connected. So how does understanding that brain connection, the amygdala hijack, and how we can be thinking about settling that brain down by building relationships, help you start thinking about why it's imperative that we support students' emotional and social well-being? So I'm going to give you about 2 minutes, about a minute. And then you can pause and summarize. What have you heard so far that has resonated with you? Any ahas or anything that maybe you are like, oh, I do that already. Right. Okay. So about a minute and a half, go. All right, about another 15 seconds or so. So if you'd like to post in the chat, you have options. Again, not mandatory. You can do a quick write, a doodle. You can have a conversation with a colleague, and feel free to unmute yourself for the next 20 seconds or so, and then we're going to go ahead and move on. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on.
I'll share quickly just so we can encourage some other people to participate. Yeah, it looks like I wrote down voice and choice and the connection between the brain, well-being, and readiness to learn. I used to teach at a trauma-informed school, and we talked a lot about the brain and, you know, flipping your lid and like being prepared to learn for students. And I think the piece that was often missing for us is we were doing all of this work to understand trauma and its relationship to the brain, but then failing to then make the connection to the academic readiness to learn and how we can be giving our students choice in the classroom. And sometimes that will allow them to, you know, feel like they belong, and giving them those multiple pathways to learning can sometimes, what am I trying to say, you know, with your brain when it's kind of in that fight or flight, like kind of bring you back to a place where you feel like, okay, I see where I belong in the classroom now because I have this pathway to success.
Yep.
And that can directly impact, you know, your brain's processing and ability to understand.
Yes, no, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. There is that huge, and I think we need to help educators understand the why behind it so that they'll spend the time, because they're like, I don't have time for social emotional learning. And I'm like, and so I'll say, tell me more about that. I've got this, I've got that, especially middle school and high school. We don't have time. And I'm like, if I could show you the why behind it, the research behind it, and how it actually will get your kids' brains ready to learn, because the cortisol level of the hijack is now minimized because it's flooded with oxytocin. The brain, prefrontal cortex, I mean, I can go on and on about the flip lid and everything else that you were talking about. But when we help educators understand the why, and we universally design the choices and options by removing barriers so that kids can try different things academically, socially, emotionally, who's being empowered? The students. Because they will leave us in a year or whatever, however long we have our students. We need to equip and empower them to make choices that are relevant for them. Okay, so love what you shared. Thank you so much for that. So when we think about relationship building, I'd love just to share, if you're not familiar with John Hattie's work, probably many of you are, but what I'd like to kind of showcase, and I think this was a huge aha for me, is that I know as a former educator in the classroom for over 20 years, I would definitely be up on research. What are some great techniques to engage my kids, until I really started to learn about universal design for learning, about proactively removing barriers before I ever taught the lesson. Okay. If you look at, everybody's talking about learning loss, kind of a deficit model as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, how are we going to accelerate? That's the big word in education. How are we going to accelerate learning? Okay. Number one, this is what I tell teachers. Let's universally design your learning environment. Let's remove barriers academically, socially, and emotionally so the brain can get engaged. That's going to expedite learning because the brain is going to be ripe for learning. Secondly, if you look at what John Hattie said, you want to catapult student achievement, the first two, teachers' estimates of achievement, meaning what do we believe about our students? What do we believe about their families? What do we believe about their communities? Okay. Because if we don't have strong belief systems that all students can become expert learners, and I'm not going to make any excuses about their zip code or their skin color, doesn't matter, then I'm going to expect high expectations. I'm going to be a warm demander that Zaretta Hammond talks about, we're going to talk about in a bit. But secondly, do teachers feel that they have the efficacy, the ability to teach that whole child? Neither one of these has anything to do with the student. Doesn't. It's all about our belief systems, educators, and whatever our belief systems are, which is we need to deal with our implicit biases and things like that. But how can we equip and empower our educators to have that collective efficacy? Because I think a lot of times teachers are just feeling like, I don't even know how to teach anymore. And these are veteran teachers, right? How can we build that, right? We're going to help them come alongside and give them some strategies, and then how to bring in the social emotional learning throughout the day. Okay, so if you're familiar with Zaretta Hammond, you're going to do a warm demander assessment just to kind of see where you're at, because if we truly want to minimize threats and get the brain engaged, we know relationships are one of the ways, the key way. Like I said, Linda Darlene Hammond from Stanford has done extensive research. What's the antidote to trauma? Relationships. Okay, so I love this from Zaretta Hammond. She talks about being a warm demander, and a warm demander is they believe the impossible, meaning same thing as we do as UDL practitioners. Every child can become an expert learner. There's no excuses, but the way they get there may look different, and we need to provide those pathways. How do we build trust? We listen, we learn, and we are in tune with our students or our colleagues. We are empathetic listeners, and we'll talk about that. We teach self-discipline, not in a punitive way, but they demand students demonstrate self-discipline, not because they seek compliance, but because they expect excellence. And we know as adults, we failed and tried things. Many of us know, hey, this is what it's going to take to move forward in that socially, emotionally, and academically. And then we embrace failure. Do our classrooms, do our schools, do our climates, do we embrace failure as a learning? So what I'd like you to do right now, I'd like you to take a moment. I'm just going to move this out of the way. All right. So you have an option right now to look at the warm demander, and you're just going to do a quick self-assessment. You have two options. On the slide, if you have access to the slide deck, if you click on here, you're going to come to the warm demander that Zaretta Hammond talks about. Or you have the option of going to this right here, which is obviously yours forever. And you're going to click right here. So I'm just going to showcase this to you just for a moment. And then you're going to have 2 minutes just to kind of do a quick assessment. Listen, if we know relationships are the antidote, okay, we need it, that starts with us. So if warm demander is what Zaretta Hammond, author of Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain, this is the goal, but all of us are probably at different levels. Okay, so just take a moment, notice where you're at. There's no judgment, but ultimately our goal is to become the warm demander, because that's going to build trust, give kids permission to take risks, but we're also going to have high expectations for our students, all of our students. Not just some, all. So I'm going to put on the timer again. You can access it, warm demander chart right here. Or you can access it, if you click on here, it'll pop up. So take a couple minutes, assess where you're at. How can you become a warm demander? Or if you are one already, how can you continue? Or what are some steps you need to take wherever you're at to become one? All right, about another 10 seconds just to kind of wrap that up. So if you'd like to share in the chat, feel free. You don't have to. Where were you? Were you more of a sentimentalist, an elitist, a technocrat, or the warm demander? And thinking about building rapport and relationships, which is crucial to get the brain engaged, to minimize those threats that guideline in Universal Design for Learning talks about. What action steps can you take to become a warm demander? What would those steps look like and sound like? So just some thought processes. Thus, becoming a warm demander truly does build those relationships with our students. And on that document as well, and I'm not going to go over it, Zoretto Hammond also talks about having trust generators. That's another option for you to build relationship skills and to model that for your students. So one other way that I love, and I have some other resources on that document that I don't have the time to talk about, but if we really want to build rapport and relationships with our students, we really need to be empathetic listeners, okay? And I think so much in our society, when we see that falling out of depression, anxiety, especially with our youth, cutting, suicides. I mean, and then you see everything that's happening globally. We coming out of COVID, we're still in the middle of it, somewhat with, you know, all the variants. There's just a lot of fear going on in our society, and rightly so. But how can we become empathetic listeners? How can we gather information? And one thing that I had to learn with students in trauma, and I say this for all, is that it's not what's wrong with you that we need to ask, but what happened to you? And when we gather, instead of judging a child based upon their behavior or lack thereof, or whatever, academically, socially, and emotionally, why don't we sit and gather information first and find out that every child has a story, every colleague has a story. Can we then clarify that understanding with some questions and be silent and let them speak? Can we model effective listening? And there's some resources to do just that super quick. You can start tomorrow to start building that social and emotional climate of self-awareness and self-management. But educators, honestly, it starts with us. We can't expect our students to do, or our colleagues, if you're an administrator, to do this without us modeling it first. And then we affirm feelings. So there's just a couple quick ways that I wanted to share with you on how can we build self-awareness and manage our emotions so that we can be present with those we support. How can we build those relationship skills? Listening with empathy is crucial, okay? Getting to know our kids is crucial. Becoming a warm demander is crucial. These are things you can turn around and use tomorrow. So very quickly in the chat, if you'd like, pause and reflect. We talked about really getting the brain engaged and building relationships to minimize those threats that Universal Design for Learning talks about. We need to remove the barriers of those threats. How do we do that? Build rapport and relationship. Why is it important to cultivate trust and connect and build rapport with our students to get them ready to learn? Or you have an option of pausing and summarizing. What are some things you heard so far that you're like, I do need to be a more effective listener? I mean, people, starts with us. Starts with your family members, your neighbors, whomever, right? We can start practicing these things and teaching or modeling these for whoever we support. So just take a moment to reflect, and then we're going to move forward with the last part of our session today. Yes, and Caitlin, totally agree. I love what you said. But we need to encourage productive struggle. We cannot rescue people. It causes codependency. It does not cultivate those expert learners that Universal Design for Learning really talks about. But as we are providing choices and options for students to self-regulate, self-manage, it's going to be uncomfortable. Kids and adults alike are going to struggle, and that's okay. We need to allow them to struggle, but in a safe environment to do so. To where if they're struggling and they don't know what to do, we can come alongside and say, hey, I'm noticing this. Is this what's going on with you? And yeah. Okay, can I offer some suggestions? And you select what would work for you, not just come in and fix it, but I don't know, what would work for you? Can I offer some? So you're asking permission. So thanks, Caitlin, for that. And Ryan, totally agree with what you said. So we're going to move right now into options for reflection and self-regulation. So we talked a lot about this minimizing threats and distractions. That's how we engage the brain in Universal Design for Learning. We've got to remove those barriers, get kids to feel safe, and that sense of belonging. Relationships are key. But then how can we cultivate that reflection and self-regulation with our students? So what I'd like you to do is I'm just going to quickly, briefly share, because this is something, honestly, as an instructional coach for Novak, I sit alongside educators and help them actually weave this in. Okay, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some options and choices that you can be thinking about, and then give you some time to dive into the document before we end our time. And then Caitlin closes it up for us in just a bit. So we've talked so far about options and choices that you can do, and you're going to look at the resource document for more ideas on getting kids to connect, using the Castle 3 practices, great way, student check-in, building rapport and relationships, building trust with our students, getting them to be safe. Those are all things, being an empathetic listener. Those are things we can take and do tomorrow. But weaving in social emotional learning using the Castle 5 core competencies, that takes a little bit of time. Okay, that takes a lot of self-awareness on an educator's part to think about, like, I'm teaching math. How can I teach students how to be self-aware of the emotional state when they get frustrated with a math problem? Okay, so we're going to dive a little bit into this, and then you're going to have some choices and options to actually look at some lesson design, some options and opportunities. So what I'd like you to do, if you're not familiar with Castle's the competencies, this is, and it's an option for you to look at. This is an interactive wheel that, well, if you click on it, it helps you understand, okay, if I'm going to be teaching, like I say, math, how am I going to help my students become self-aware when they get frustrated and kids want to shut down because I hate math, or I'm terrible at math, or whatever, right? How can we build in that self-awareness where kids are starting to notice that they're starting to feel frustrated? And then how can we start building that self-efficacy for them to not just become self-aware, but how can they manage those emotions in a way that's not a one-size-fits-all? Meaning we can teach breathing, journaling, coloring, piece of whatever, but ultimately we need to allow the students, and this is so much Universal Design for Learning, we provide multiple pathways. Ultimately, the kids make the choice. And then we have them reflect what worked, what didn't work, what would you do next time, right? On whatever they chose to self-manage their frustrations, whether it be with a peer, with something that they're learning. And then think about it as we are allowing them to make choices with how they manage their emotions, or tools that they'll use to learn more about something. They need to learn how to make responsible decisions. So what decisions are you going to have to make in order to stay undistracted when you are working with a peer, right? So they're going to have to start making responsible decisions. And so much of choices and options, having collaborative conversations with students, with themselves, PBL, things where they have to work, they have to develop relationship skills. How are we teaching them to communicate effectively, right? These can all be woven into your lesson design to help students really apply social emotional learning in the context of their learning environment. And that's where learning, the deeper learning actually happens. So I just wanted to kind of walk you through that. I do want to give you some time right now to choose, and what we call in UDL, because I know this has been a quick time together, but I do want to give you about 4 or 5 minutes to go into the document and choose, you select what we call win time, what I need. So this has been fast. These 1-hour webinars go by super quick. I get it. But basically what you heard me talk about, what you had time to reflect on, put in the chat. Decide where you want to learn more about. Do you want to learn about how to incorporate student check-ins to build that self-awareness? You're going to want to land right here. If you want to learn about how to build trust, how to speak with empathy to students, there are 2 great things from understood.com that'll just give you sentence frames that honestly I use with my adult children who are 26 and 28. I use these things because I can get in a mood state where I'm just irritated and I'm like, I am not looking at this person through an empathetic lens. If you are wanting to help your kids respond, or colleagues or whatever, start practicing responding productively rather than negatively, this was 116-page coping skills. This thing is like a gold mine. Sift through that, get some ideas. Negative thinking, crucial. Fixed mindset versus the, oh gosh, I'm losing it right now. The more of a fixed mindset, and then we have more of a positive mindset, okay? How do we help kids move from that? How do we help them deal with their negative thinking? And if you're interested in looking at some lessons that actually incorporate social emotional learning, you have that opportunity. So I'm going to go ahead and give you about 4 minutes to just have some quiet time. You decide where you want to land. And I'm just going to skip through. This is called win time. You decide where you want to land, because at the end, we're going to do a quick optimistic closure, and you're going to share like, hey, this is a takeaway that I'm going to do, or this is what I'm going to further explore. So I'm going to shut off my camera. If you have any questions, I'm available by chat, but I'm going to give you about 4 minutes just to do some self-exploration, and then we're going to wrap up our day.
I was going to say, if you want to even just maybe cut it in half, do like 2.5.
2.5. Okay.
Yeah, we're a little over and people are having to drop off. So.
Okay, perfect. All right, so about 2 minutes then, go. Okay, about another 10 seconds just to kind of wrap that up, just because I know we're a little short on time. Okay, just to wrap up, and then Caitlin's going to take the rest. Just want to let you know you have 2 options to learn more about Universal Design for Learning. There is Dr. Katie Novak has come out with a 3rd edition of UDL Now. Check it out. The information's on this slide, and I'm also I'm running an actually facilitated course on UDL, getting into it, through June through July, you can get 3 grad credits or 45 continuing education hours. So it's all the information is on the slide. And so appreciate being with you here today. What I'd like to do super quick is you just think, you don't have to post it just for the sake of time, and then Caitlin's gonna just take the rest of the day, is what's 1 or 2 takeaways, new learning from today that you're gonna think about to do to support your students with social and emotional learning to engage their brain. So just take a moment, and then Caitlin, I'm just gonna go ahead and feel free to leave feedback if you'd like. And then Caitlin, take it away.
And I appreciate everyone's time. I don't want to respect your schedules. We just wanted to close out by reminding you, today's learning experience was brought to you by Impero. And it's funny, I was kind of reflecting myself. I was noticing that SEL wheel and kind of the layers of that wheel. And I had jotted down, being self-aware and self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, social awareness. And then it's funny, we have this wheel too, because, what we're trying to accomplish with the software that we offer is educating and keeping the entire student safe. And so we use the word holistic a lot. And we like to say that, the software that we offer to our students is about holistic approach to keeping students safe, focused, ready to learn. So if you'd like to learn more about the products that we offer and how they can kind of tie to and support a lot of the social emotional learning, universal design learning, choice is like embedded in everything that we do in our classroom management software, keeping students safe and being aware of those triggers and those concerning behaviors as it's tied to our online safety modules. We'd love to discuss that with you further. So you can find some more information about our products on imperosoftware.com, and one of our representatives would be happy to discuss how today's learning ties into what we offer as an organization. But either way, we hope that today was meaningful for you. And the book that Lisa just mentioned is actually the one that we'll be raffling off to one of today's participants. So my colleague Megan was just messaging me that we'll be announcing that winner in follow-up email. So that book, UDL Now, that 3rd edition that's releasing in May, one of you today, thank you very much for participating, will be receiving that as a gift from us. So thank you.
Yes, thank you everybody for attending. Really appreciate it. And my contact information is on there if you're interested in me answering any questions for you. But thank you, Caitlin, for having me. And I'm just going to go ahead and stop share and
thank you so much.
Stop the recording. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. Take care.
Yes, bye.